everyone, welcome back. Today we're going to be doing my January wrap up. I read 8 books in January, which for some I know is not a lot, but for me, I read 8 books. I finished 8 books in January. I'm so proud of myself. The first one I finished was a collection of poetry, Ariel by Sylvia Plath. If you know me, you know I'm a big Sylvia Plath fangirl, I guess. And I've read several of her poems, and I've read several of the poems in this collection, but I had never read it as a whole. I read the Colossus last year, and I also have like the collected poems, but I had never just like read Ariel. This is the restored edition. So this is the edition that she originally had outlined. When it was first published by her husband, Ted Hughes, he added some in, took some out, and the American publication was different from the British publication, just thinking about the different audiences and how they would respond to it. So in this one, they've restored like her intended outline. The poems I liked best are like the poems that I knew I would like best, like Daddy and Lady Lazarus. Some of the others were fine too, but didn't speak to me as much. So I've been trying to get back into reading poetry, and I've been doing that mostly through Instagram, but I also just want to read like poetry collections, and this was the first one I picked up this year because I already had it on my Kindle. If you have recommendations for other poetry collections, let me know, because I really do want to explore that genre more this year. The second book I finished in January was Ready Player 2 by Ernest Cline. I really liked the first book of this series, Ready Player 1, and it was written kind of like a standalone. Like, no one really expected there to be a sequel. To be honest, like, I still don't think that there needed to be a sequel, but I went in with pretty like low expectations, and I enjoyed it until I didn't. The plot is very similar to Ready Player One. Like, it has pretty much the same structure. It's almost like you're retelling the same story basically. And I think everyone knows Ready Player One, but if you're unfamiliar with it, it's a sci-fi, so it's a futuristic setting where the world is kind of like a wasteland, and everyone in the population really like escapes through VR headsets and live and like daily life is like operated in this VR environment called the Oasis. So Ready Player 2 is very similar. There's another like competition in a way where they have to find, like, they have clues and they're trying to find the answer to these clues, and there's a villain. It's a very similar plot structure. I don't think it was done as well as the first one. There's one scene where it's very focused on Prince, and like it didn't really make a lot of sense. Like, it wasn't, there was a lot of things happening in that scene, and then it just like ended. I still don't really know what happened in that scene. It includes a lot of 80s references, almost like he wasn't able to work into the first one, so he's like, oh, okay, well, now's my opportunity to put in like John Hughes films. And there were some like 90s references too, which was nice. I would have kind of liked it if this book was like set in like 90s culture, the same way that the first one was set in 80s, but it really wasn't. The ending was weird, and I've not heard anyone talk about this ending. Like, I went on Goodreads after I finished it to see if like there were other conversations about it, and I could not find anyone. So if you've read this, talk to me about what you think about the ending, because I didn't like it. I thought it was weird. I thought it was real weird. I gave this one, I think, 2 stars, because by the end I didn't really enjoy it. The next book I read was a reread of The Great Gatsby. I listened to this audiobook. It was read by Jake Gyllenhaal, who, like, he did a great job. The Great Gatsby came into the public domain this year, and so I know that it like is going to be everywhere from here on out. Like, we're going to get a lot of retellings and adaptations, and like I just fully expect to see The Great Gatsby everywhere, so I wanted to get ahead of that and reread the source material first. I kind of felt the same about it as the first time I read it. It's a very well-crafted story, I think. It's pretty short, which I appreciate. It has a lot of symbolism and is about like wanting something you can't have. It's kind of about like the American dream, idolizing someone to the point to where like you're in love with the idea of a person and not the actual person. I don't know. There's a lot to unpack. I enjoyed it. Jake Gyllenhaal did a great job too. The fourth book I finished was Scythe by Neil Shusterman. And if you watch my 48-hour reading vlog, you'll know like I talked about this book a lot, so you'll see the play-by-play in that video. I really liked it. It is a YA dystopian where like society is kind of like they've peaked. They've solved all of our major problems like famine and illness and death and everything. They're able to bring people back to life, but because of that, there's like an overpopulation problem. And so there's this society known as Scythes where people have the profession of like killing other people called gleaning. They choose members of the population randomly to kill to keep the population number under control. It's about kind of the corruption of the Scythes. And it was really good. I enjoyed it, and I listened to the audiobook, and then I jumped straight into the sequel, and I also finished the sequel, which is more about like the AI that controls everything in a way. Like he becomes a bigger player. I did not like the sequel as much. I found it not as compelling as the first one. I did like that there were more female characters in the second one. That was my big issue with the first one, is that there weren't that many female characters, and the female characters that were in it were like basically the same character. Like Sidra and Scythe Curie are basically like the same character, just at different ages. But the sequel does have at least 2 more female characters that are like different. They have different personalities. So I appreciated that. I really loved the ending, and throughout the whole book I'm like, I don't hate this, but I don't think it's enough for me to read the third book. But then the ending was so good and like so surprising that I might read the third one. I haven't decided yet. If you've read this series, let me know if the third one is worth reading, or like if it's going to be a letdown, or if, you know, if it'll be okay if I just leave it here. So the next book I finished was The Midnight Library, and I also talked about this a lot in that reading vlog. I finished quite a few books in that reading vlog. This one I started off really liking, and I liked it less and less as I read, and I ended up giving it 2.5 stars. In this book, you're following a woman who decides to kill herself. And when she wakes up, she's in like a library kind of her life, where every book has a version of her life had she made a different decision. And she gets to decide which books she wants to like read and like jump into that life and kind of like see which one she would like to continue. What decision results in her ideal perfect life. And I really like that concept, but the book itself, I don't know. I had a lot of issues with some of the messages that it portrayed, whether intentionally or unintentionally. I go into depth about that in that reading vlog, so if you're interested, I recommend just checking that out. I didn't like it as much as I went on. I ended up 2.5 stars. And then the next book I finished, I have to say, this month, my husband and I started watching the Haikyuu anime, and I am not someone who watches a lot of TV shows, and I definitely don't like binge watch shows, but we have watched almost all 4 seasons of the show just this month. We're on season 4, we're about halfway through. So I started reading the manga, and I read volume 1. It is so good. It is about a high school men's volleyball team, and I don't like sports very much. I don't understand the hype of sports until I read this. It's so good. Like, I've never cared about volleyball so much in my life, and it makes you really love every single character. Like, there is not a single character that I dislike, and there are a lot of characters because it introduces the whole team, and then the coaches and the managers and then members of the other teams too. And my camera battery's blinking at me, so it's gonna die. I'll be right back. Where were we talking about? Haikyuu. The way it introduces characters is really good because even though there are a lot of characters, it introduces them gradually. So you really get to spend time with each one. And it's just so cute and heartwarming, and it's just so good. I don't know how else to say this. It seems to me something that would be universally liked. If you're not into anime, like it's probably a good like way to enter watching anime, because I think it's just very accessible and just like so wholesome. I love it. Yeah, I read the first volume of the manga. Currently reading the second volume, and there are 45 volumes, which is a lot. And I don't know yet how I'm going to read them, but I think I'm pretty determined to read them all because I love it. Highly, highly recommend. I give it 5 stars. The last book I finished this month was Star Wars from a Certain Point of View. And I did not know this going in, but this book is basically a retelling of Episode 4, Star Wars: A New Hope. It's written in a series of short stories, all by different authors, and it's all from the perspective of like a side character. Like you would expect, some stories are better than others. There were some stories that I thought were really good. In fact, like in my reading vlog, I did a clip where I was reading a story and I ended up like in tears by the end of it because it was so good. So I did enjoy this, but since there were some stories that I didn't really vibe with, I ended up giving it like 3 stars, which for me is a neutral rating. And I did get the Empire Strikes Back edition, or like sequel, I guess, for Christmas. So I will be reading this at some point, but I have so many Star Wars books on my TBR. Like, it's going to be a year full of Star Wars. So I'm not sure when I'm going to get to this, but I do plan to read this year. By the way, I don't know, should I say this here? By the way, I, surprise, am a co-host on a Star Wars podcast. So if you want to know more about that, I will link it down below. It's called Followers of the Force, and we have been having a great time. So yeah, anyway, I'm not going to spend too much time talking about that. And the other book, I'm really excited. My husband and I have decided to read Dune together. We are going very slowly because he's not much of a reader. We both have busy schedules, so we're doing 1 chapter per week. And I actually bought this copy because he's reading my other copy, and he felt very like self-conscious about like ruining that copy, so I bought this one, and this one is even like prettier. So far we're enjoying it. I think he's enjoying it slightly more than I am. I'm a little bit bored. I don't know much about the story or what's happening in it. I don't know how often I will update you on this, like if I will update you every month, because again, like we're going through it very slowly. It will probably take us all year to finish it at the pace that we're going. So I might do like every 3 months or something. So we're both reading Dune. It is happening. I'm very proud of everyone. Okay, so I think that's all for now. Thank you so much for watching. Let me know which of these books you are most excited about, if you've read any of them, what your opinions are, and what your favorite book that you read in January was. If you like this video, please give it a thumbs up and subscribe. I'll catch you next time. Bye. Should I move my hair to this side so that it's not as obvious that I filmed this the same day as my last video? It's like Daddy and Lady Lazarus. Oh, ooh. Rex is like licking right now. I'm so sorry if you can hear this on camera. Hey, baby, can it be nap time instead? I'm sorry. I know, it's such an inconvenience. I listened to it on audio. I always say I listen to it on audio instead of just saying I listen to the audiobook. I have no idea why I say it that way. I'm sorry. Side note, I've listened to The Bell Jar read by Maggie Gyllenhaal, and she did a really good job too. So can they just like narrate more books, please? By Neal Shusterman. Okay, I thought it was Schusterman, but then I saw other people, and in the audiobook they pronounce it differently. So I think it's Shusterman. There's not another H though, so it's hard for me to say. Scythe by Neal Shusterman. Where is Unwind at? I just reorganize my color now. I don't know. Shusterman. Is my background blurrier now? Probably his best written book. It still kind of has like that pretentious like philosophical dialogue between characters that are like teenagers and don't normally talk like that. Although like when I was a teenager, I had friends that talk like that. So, but hi, did you sniff my hand? Oh goodness, big shake. You got a raindrop on your snoot.